Hey people, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're well and in good health. Okay, right now let's take a look at this Guardian article. So, UK COVID takeaway habits endures, fast food calorie intakes remain high. Let's take a look at what this study is all about. So, when the big C happened around about 3-4 years ago, all these pandemics and lockdowns, we had it here in the UK, you saw it across the world. How did it affect people? One of the elements that was, in effect was how people kind of were eating and stuff, eating habits. So, for example, we had apps like Deliveroo and Uber Eats, that just suddenly, just shot up in usage. I remember, if I fancy a burger or a pizza or something, I'd walk down to the local takeaway. It takes a few minutes, pick the meal up whilst I've ordered it, and walk back home. And during this time, I got used to the phone, the apps. Couldn't be bothered walking down, just ordering on Uber. Someone would come, drop the food off, and there you have it. Now, of course, this is not good in the sense that, it's costing you more money because you have to pay more for deliveries. But obviously, the convenience element was useful for many people who were just couldn't be bothered, being lazy, or were restricted due to some of the issues around the pandemic and the big C that occurred at that time. Obviously, those rules and lockdown rules have eased off and now are pretty much non-existent. So people are still into that habit. So let's see what's going on here. Delivery app riders peddling through cities and tailbacks at drive-thrus were familiar signs of Britain's hunger for takeaway food at the peak of the COVID pandemic. Now a study suggests it became an enduring habit. After booming orders on Deliveroo, Just Eat and other platforms by lockdown consumers, research by the Institute for Fiscal Studies suggests the popularity of takeaways, meal deliveries and food on the go, bought from retailers such as sandwiches and crisps, has remained above pre-pandemic levels after the removal of restrictions. Analysing data on shopping habits from thousands of consumers, the think tank said calorie consumption from takeaway food grew by more than 50% during the height of the pandemic and had stayed high thereafter as households continued to opt for a night in front of the TV instead of a meal at the restaurant or pub. Now you can see here, for example, in the West, the levels of cancer and illnesses have shot up. Obesity levels are very high. You're more likely to have obesity than hunger here in the UK, for example, compared to other parts of the world, which shows you how these issues are affecting people, such as overeating, such as eating fried and oily foods, not healthy foods, not doing enough exercise, getting active, staying at home, that kind of stuff is affecting people in a negative way. We've also got, increases of cancers, things like plastic wrapping, plastics getting into bodies, that kind of stuff. Some food packagings have these, some cookery elements. Today I've just ordered a frying pan, which is PFAS free, so Forever Chemicals is free of that. If you need to look at that kind of stuff and do some research around it. Obviously, Forever Chemicals are everywhere. Sometimes in detergents, cleaning products, in cooking utensils. So you've got to do some research and make sure that you're getting PFAS-free stuff which doesn't contain these forever chemicals in terms of bettering your health and reducing the risk around that. So obviously a lot of these companies do use these elements in their products and services, so be aware. So, highlighting a big shift in the country's diet and sources of nutrition, the IFS said the legacy of these lockdowns could include long-term effects on health and weight, which is exactly what I've just said. The study, which was funded by the Obesity Policy Research Unit at University College London, UCL, estimated that before the pandemic, the average UK adult consumed about 270 calories a week from takeaways. This increased to 395 calories a week during the first lockdown in 2020 when restaurants, pubs and cafes were forced to close as the pandemic spread. While the reopening of hospitality later in the year fueled a decline in takeaway consumption, levels still remain higher than before the pandemic, even while the government's Eat Out to Help scheme was in place where people got, vouchers to go eat out and stuff like that. Some people did take the mickey and, use the system to commit fraud and that kind of stuff. Not all, obviously. Other people used it to go out and help restaurants with their revenue generation during this difficult time. So during the third lockdown, nationally, here in England, 2021, calorie consumption from takeaways ballooned further to an average of 470 calories a week, as the country adapted to living in the pandemic, with more restaurants and pubs switched to accommodate takeaway orders. However, despite the easing of restrictions, these high levels endured after the widespread reopening of hospitality venues, about 400 calories a week by early 2022, 50% above the pre-pandemic levels. Like I said, you can see now high levels of cancer, people being obese, heart attack rates, health problems, blood clots, strokes, with high levels of salt intake, because a lot of these foods, processed foods especially, have higher levels of salt and sugar, and that is affecting humans right now. The researchers said they had only been able to examine data up to the first quarter of 2022 before the cost of living crisis, meaning it's not entirely clear whether the UK's takeaway habit survived the sharpest jump in food prices since the 70s. However, the initial findings suggest a marked shift. Definitely so, because the amount of delivery drivers out there, Uber drivers and delivery drivers out there right now, is still mad. There are loads of people out there that are doing these type of delivery jobs that you see in the area, and it's still quite popular right now. So it just shows you how much calories people might be intaking with this type of food. The study also found the size of households' food shopping baskets increased at the height of pandemic in 2020, but then largely returned to normal over calorie purchases had returned to 2019 levels, by 2022, suggesting that the increase in takeaways has come at the expense of coffee shops, pubs and restaurants. Andrew McKendrick, a research economist at IFS, said lockdowns and closure of hospitality left a bigger role for consumption of food at home and for takeaways, but by the start of 2022, most of these changes had been reversed. Households had largely gone back to purchasing as much as they did in 2019. The pandemic did leave one legacy, though, is the much increased use of takeaway foods. Obviously, there is pros and cons of takeaway foods in terms of convenience, that kind of stuff. But then on the downside, you do have problems around health and so on. So if you're looking to make money, be an entrepreneur, you need to get fit, get healthy, get strong, and you need to potentially cook more at home, cook fresh foods rather than processed or frozen foods, and balance your diet there as well. Okay, people, do let us know in the comment section below. Were you someone who got affected by these restrictions during the lockdown pandemic periods? Are you ordering a lot on Uber and all these other kind of apps, delivery apps? Do let us know in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Catch you in the next one.